They thought I was just a waitress. They thought I was a nobody. My in-laws spent the entire dinner laughing at my cheap dress, until a man walked in that made the entire restaurant go silent. That man was my father, the CEO of Vance Global, and he wasn't there for the food. He was there for revenge. I've spent 3 years living a double life. To my husband Mark, I am Kajal, a girl from a modest background who loves indie coffee shops and works as a freelance graphic designer. To the rest of the world, specifically the business elite of Manhattan, I am Kajal Vance, the sole heiress to the Vance global empire. Why the secret? Because I wanted to know if someone could love me without seeing a dollar sign on my forehead. Mark passed that test. He's kind, hardworking, and treats me like I'm the center of his universe. But Mark's parents, they are a different species. The Millers are old money, or at least they pretend to be. They live in a massive estate in Connecticut, wear labels that scream their price tags, and treat anyone with a normal job like gum on the bottom of their expensive Italian loafers. Tonight was their 30th anniversary dinner. The venue was Les Clottes, a restaurant so exclusive that you don't just need a reservation, you need a bloodline. I arrived early, wearing a simple navy blue dress I bought on sale. No jewelry, no designer bag, just me. As I waited in the foyer, the maitre d' looked at me with an arched eyebrow, his gaze lingering on my off-brand heels. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked, the word miss sounding like an insult. "I'm with the Miller party," I said calmly. He checked the book, his lip curling. "Ah yes, the extra guest, follow me." He led me to a table in the center of the room, draped in white linen, and surrounded by people who looked like they were carved out of ice. My in-laws were already there, surrounded by their inner circle, the elite of the social registry. The air at the table was thick with the scent of Chanel No. 5 and condescension. The taste of disdain. As I approached, Eleanor Miller didn't even stand. She adjusted her pearls and whispered something to the woman next to her, who let out a sharp, bird-like laugh. "Oh, Kajal, you're here," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "I specifically told Mark to remind you that this is a black tie event. I suppose black tie means something different in whatever neighborhood you grew up in." "I think she looks lovely, Mom," Mark said, squeezing my hand as I sat down. He looked handsome in his tux, but I could see the sweat on his forehead. He spent his whole life trying to please these people. Richard Miller, the patriarch, didn't even look up from his glass of scotch. "Lovely isn't the word, Mark. Distracting is the word. She looks like she's here to refill the water carafes. Richard, pass me the menu. I don't want the staff thinking we're associated with the help." The table erupted in polite, cruel laughter. One of their friends, a plastic-looking woman named Mrs. Sterling, leaned in. "So, Kajal dear, I hear you do graphics on the computer. Is that like making posters for lost cats? It must be so nice to have a little hobby, while my Mark does the heavy lifting." I felt my nails digging into my palms. "It's a bit more than that, Mrs. Sterling. I handle branding and UI/UX for several tech firms." "Tech firms," Richard snorted. "Probably startups run out of garages. Look at this wine list, girl. Do you even know what a 1982 Petrus is? Or do you usually just stick to the house white at the local dive bar?" The dinner progressed like a slow-motion car crash. Every course was served with a side of humiliation. When the escargot arrived, Eleanor made a point of teaching me how to use the tongs, speaking loudly enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "Now, dear, try not to fling it across the room. We aren't at a carnival." But the real knife came out during the main course. Richard cleared his throat and tapped his crystal glass with a silver spoon. "Listen, everyone, we have an announcement. As many of you know, the Miller firm is looking to expand. We need strong alliances, legacies." He turned his cold gray eyes toward Mark. "Mark, son, we've tolerated this experiment of yours for 3 years, but you're a Miller. You need a wife who brings more to the table than a laptop and a collection of thrift store dresses. We've spoken to the Sterlings. Their daughter Sarah, a Yale graduate with a family legacy that matches ours, is interested. My heart dropped. Mark looked horrified. Dad, what are you talking about? I'm married to Kajal. Eleanor reached across the table, not to touch my hand, but to slide a piece of paper toward me. It was a check. Kajal, let's be adults. You're a waitress in a designer world. You don't belong here, and you're holding him back. This check is for $50,000. That's probably 5 years of salary for someone like you. Take it, sign the divorce papers, and go find someone in your own bracket. I stared at the check. The zeros looked small. $50,000? I asked, my voice trembling, not with sadness, but with a cold, hard rage that had been building for 3 years. I know, it's a lot for you. You could buy a nice little house in the suburbs. Maybe even a car that doesn't make that rattling noise. Just think of it as a tip for the 3 years you spent serving our son. The entire table was watching me now. Mrs. Sterling was whispering behind her hand. Richard was looking at his watch, as if I was wasting his billable hours. You really think this is what I'm worth? I asked. Honestly? Richard leaned in, his face turning red. I think it's overpaying. You've been a parasite on our family name. You're a nobody from nowhere. Your father is probably some blue-collar drunk, and your mother is a nobody. You have no breeding, no class, and no future in this family. Now take the money and vanish before I have the manager escort you out, like the trespasser you are. Mark stood up, finally finding his backbone. That's enough. We're leaving. Sit down, Mark, Richard roared. You stay. She leaves. She's just a waitress. She's nothing. Just as Richard shouted the word nothing, the heavy oak-carved doors of L'Eclat thundered open. Usually the staff moves with a quiet, practiced grace. But suddenly there was a frantic energy in the room. The owner of the restaurant, not the manager, the actual owner, came sprinting from the back, straightening his tie with trembling hands. He ignored the mayors and senators sitting in the front, heading straight toward the entrance. A man stepped into the light. He was tall, with silvering hair at his temples and a suit that cost more than Richard's entire car collection. He moved with the kind of absolute authority that didn't need to raise its voice. Behind him were 4 men in dark suits with earpieces. The entire restaurant went silent. You could hear a pin drop on the marble floor. Sterling gasped, her fork hitting her plate with a loud clink. Arthur Vance, Richard whispered, his face turning a ghostly shade of white. The King of Wall Street. He hasn't been seen in public for months. Why is he here? Richard scrambled to his feet, knocking his wine glass over. The red wine spilled across the white cloth like a bloodstain, but he didn't care. He smoothed his hair and put on his most sycophantic smile. The world tilts. Arthur Vance scanned the room. His eyes were like ice, cutting through the crowd until they landed on our table. He began walking toward us. Richard was vibrating with excitement. He's coming here. He must have heard about our firm's proposal. This is it, Eleanor. Our legacy is sealed. As my father reached the table, Richard stepped forward, hand outstretched. Mr. Vance, what an incredible surprise. I'm Richard Miller, CEO of Miller Associates. We've been trying to secure a moment with your office for... My father didn't even acknowledge Richard's hand. He didn't even acknowledge Richard's existence. He walked right past him, his eyes locked on me. The security guards stepped in front of Richard, gently but firmly pushing him back. Richard stumbled, looking confused. Mr. Vance, I think there's a mistake. The girl you're looking at is just... Princess, my father said. The word was quiet, but in the silent room, it sounded like a thunderclap. He reached out and I took his hand. He pulled me up from the cramped chair and kissed my forehead. I told you that dinner with the in-laws sounded like a bore. You should have come to the gallery opening with me instead. The reckoning. The silence at the table was so heavy, it felt like it was crushing the breath out of the Millers. Eleanor's mouth was hanging open, her pearls looking like a noose around her neck. Richard looked like he was having a stroke. Daughter? Eleanor stammered. Kajal is your daughter? My father turned to look at her for the first time. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 20 degrees. "I'm sorry, who are you?" I'm Eleanor Miller. We were just discussing Kajal's career." My father looked down at the table. His eyes landed on the $50,000 check Eleanor had pushed toward me. He picked it up with 2 fingers as if it were a dirty tissue. $50,000? He looked at Richard. "Is this a joke? My daughter's charitable foundation spends more than this on office supplies in a week." He looked at the check again, and then at Richard. "I heard you mention liquidation earlier, Richard. It's funny you should use that word." Richard was shaking now. "Mr. Vance, please, there's been a massive misunderstanding. We didn't know. We thought we were just joking." "My daughter doesn't find your jokes funny, Richard," my father said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "And neither do I. I was actually considering the Miller firm for a merger. But after seeing how you treat the help, and seeing as the help happens to be the person who would have signed your contract, I think I'll change my mind." The aftermath. I looked at Mark. He was staring at me, his eyes wide, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't looking at his parents for approval. He was looking at me with a mix of shock and a strange kind of relief. I turned back to Eleanor. I picked up the check she had given me, tore it into 4 slow, deliberate pieces, and dropped them into her spilled glass of expensive red wine. "You wanted to buy my exit, Eleanor?" I said, my voice calm and steady. "Keep your money. You're going to need every cent, because by 9 a.m. tomorrow, Vance Global will begin a hostile takeover of Miller Associates. And since you're so fond of liquidation, we'll start with your husband's office." Richard collapsed back into his chair, his face gray. "Wait," I added, looking at the Sterlings and the rest of their elite friends. "And as for the rest of you, I'd suggest you check your portfolios. My father is very protective of his waitress daughter." I leaned over and kissed Mark on the cheek. "I'm going home to pack a bag, Mark. You can come with me, or you can stay here with your legacy. The choice is yours. But if you come as a husband, not a Miller." I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and walked out of Le Cot, my father by my side. Behind us, I could hear the sounds of Richard Miller begging for a second chance, and Eleanor sobbing into her silk napkin. The doors closed behind us, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I wasn't just a waitress, and I wasn't just an heiress. The mirage of the modest wife. For 3 years, I lived a lie that felt more like a sanctuary. To my husband, Mark, I was Kajal, a dedicated freelance graphic designer with a penchant for vintage bookstores and thrift shop finds. He loved me for my mind, not my bank account. But to the elite circles of Manhattan, I was Kajal Vance, the iron heiress to Vance Global, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that owned half the skyline. I kept my identity hidden because I wanted a love that wasn't a business transaction. Mark passed the test, but his parents, the Millers, were a different story. They were old money snobs who measured a person's worth by the thread count of their sheets and the prestige of their last name. Tonight was their 30th anniversary at Le Clot, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, a place where the waiters had PhDs in wine and the patrons had egos the size of planets. I arrived in a simple navy dress, my hair in a modest bun. As I walked to the table, the Millers' friends looked at me like I was a glitch in the Matrix. The appetizer of arrogance. Eleanor Miller didn't even offer a greeting. She simply looked at my shoes and let out a long, theatrical sigh. "Mark, darling, I thought the invitation specified formal attire. Kajal looks like she's ready to take a shift at the local library." "I think she looks beautiful, Mom," Mark said, squeezing my hand under the table. His loyalty was his best quality, but tonight, it wasn't enough to shield me. Richard Miller, the patriarch, sipped a scotch that cost more than my freelance monthly rent. "Beauty is fine for a portrait, Mark, but a Miller wife needs pedigree. We are surrounded by senators and CEOs tonight. And your wife is, well, she's essentially a waitress with a laptop. It's embarrassing." The table of socialites chuckled. Sterling, a woman whose face was pulled so tight she couldn't blink, leaned in. "So, Kajal dear, what is it you actually do? Do you make those little missing cat flyers? It must be so quaint to have a hobby while the men do the real work." The $50,000 insult. As the main course was served, Eleanor decided it was time to play her hand. She didn't want a waitress in the family tree. She wanted a merger. She reached into her designer clutch and pulled out a slip of paper, sliding it across the white linen toward me. "Kajal, let's be realistic," she said, her voice dropping to a predatory whisper. "You don't belong here. You're holding Mark back from his true potential. This is a check for $50,000. It's more than you'll make in 5 years of designing. Take it, sign the divorce papers we've prepared, and go find someone more your speed." The table went silent. Mark gasped, "Mom, have you lost your mind?" But Richard chimed in. "It's a generous offer, girl. A nobody like you should be thanking us. You've had 3 years of the high life on our dime. Consider this your final tip. Now take it and vanish, before I have the manager escort you out for trespassing." The breaking point. I looked at the check. The ink was still wet. I felt a cold, familiar fire rising in my chest. The same fire my father used to close billion-dollar deals. "50,000? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "I know it's a lot for you to process," Eleanor smirked. "You could buy a nice little house in a town we'd never have to visit. You're a waitress in a world of kings, Kajal. Know your place." I looked at Mark. He was trembling with rage, standing up to defend me, but I put a hand on his arm. "Wait," I whispered. I turned back to Richard. "You really think I'm a parasite? You really think my family has nothing to offer?" Richard laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Your family? Your father probably wears a name tag to work. You have no breeding, no class, and no power. You are nothing." At that exact moment, the heavy mahogany doors of the restaurant burst open. The maitre d', who had spent the night sneering at me, suddenly turned pale and bowed so low his forehead nearly hit the floor. A man strode in, flanked by 4 security guards in tactical suits. He wore a charcoal suit that radiated power. It was Arthur Vance. The entire restaurant froze. People stood up instinctively. Arthur Vance didn't just have money, he had influence. He was the man who decided which banks lived and which companies died. Richard Miller scrambled to his feet, knocking his chair over in his haste. "Mr. Vance, what an incredible honor. I'm Richard Miller. We've sent your office several proposals." Arthur didn't even blink. He walked right past Richard's outstretched hand, as if he were invisible. He walked straight to our table, his eyes locked on me. "Is there a problem, Princess?" my father asked. The word echoed through the silent dining room like a gunshot. The security guards stepped in, creating a perimeter around our table, pushing Richard and Eleanor back. Eleanor's face went from smug to ghostly white in 3 seconds. "Arthur, Mr. Vance," Eleanor stammered. You know her?" My father looked at the check sitting in the spilled wine. He picked it up with 2 fingers and read it aloud. $50,000 to leave her husband? He looked at Richard with a terrifying, predatory smile. "Richard, my daughter's personal handbag costs more than this check. Are you insulting the Vance family, or are you just that broke?" Kajal is a Vance? The hostile takeover. I stood up, no longer the modest wife, but the heiress I was born to be. The entire room was staring. Mrs. Sterling looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. "I tried to tell you, Eleanor," I said, my voice projecting with the authority of the Vance name. "I didn't want your money. I wanted your respect. But you couldn't give that to a waitress. So now, let's talk business." I turned to my father. "Dad, isn't Vance Global the primary debt holder for Miller Associates?" My father nodded, checking his watch. "We are. In fact, I was planning on discussing a grace period for their upcoming loan payments. But after seeing how they treat my daughter..." He looked at Richard. "The grace period is over. As of 9 a.m. tomorrow, we are calling in all your loans. Since you're so fond of liquidation, we're going to liquidate your entire company. Richard collapsed back into his chair. His eyes glazed over. He had just lost everything in the span of 60 seconds. The satisfaction of justice. Eleanor started to sob, reaching out for my dress. "Kajal, please, we didn't know. We were just trying to protect Mark." "No," I said, stepping back so she couldn't touch me. "You were trying to protect your ego. You didn't care about Mark's happiness. You cared about his pedigree. Well, here is your pedigree. You're bankrupt." I looked at Mark. He was shocked, yes, but he took my hand. He looked at his parents and then back at me. "I'm going with my wife," he said firmly. "And don't bother calling. We're changing our numbers." As we walked out of Leclerc, the same maitre d' held the door open, trembling. I looked back one last time to see Eleanor Miller staring at the torn, wine-stained check on the floor. I wasn't just a waitress. I was the one who just closed the biggest deal of my life. The one where I finally got rid of the trash. The fall from grace. 1 month had passed since the night at Leclerc. The Millers' Connecticut mansion was gone, sold at a bank auction to cover the massive debts Vance Global had called in. Richard and Eleanor were now living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood they used to call the slums. For the first time in her life, Eleanor had to do her own laundry. Her designer silk scarves were replaced by cheap cotton, and her social circle had evaporated overnight. The phone didn't ring anymore. The invitations to galas and polo matches had stopped. They were officially the untouchables of New York high society. The service entrance. Desperate for money, Richard and Eleanor were forced to take jobs with a high-end catering firm. They thought they could hide in the kitchens, but fate had other plans. The catering company's biggest contract of the year was for the Vance Global Charity Gala, the most prestigious event in the city. "I can't do this, Richard," Eleanor sobbed, tugging at the stiff, uncomfortable white apron of her server's uniform. "What if someone sees us?" "We have no choice, Eleanor," Richard snapped, his voice tired. "It's this or the street. Just keep your head down and hand out the champagne." The queen of the night. The gala was breathtaking. Thousands of lilies filled the hall, and the air hummed with the voices of the world's most powerful people. Suddenly, the music swelled, and a hush fell over the room. I walked down the grand staircase, wearing a custom gown of midnight velvet. Mark was by my side, looking more confident than ever. He had officially joined Vance Global as the head of innovation, earning his place through merit, not his last name. As I moved through the crowd, I saw a silver tray shaking in the hands of a server. She was staring at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and envy. The vulture's circle. Before I could speak, Mrs. Sterling, the same woman who had helped Eleanor humiliate me, approached the tray. She recognized Eleanor immediately. "Oh my goodness!" Mrs. Sterling laughed loudly, attracting the attention of nearby guests. "Is that Eleanor Miller, serving appetizers? My, how the pedigree has fallen. I'll take a shrimp cocktail, dear, and try not to spill it on my gown. It costs more than your new apartment." The surrounding socialites began to whisper and snicker. It was the same cruel, elitist bullying Eleanor had practiced her entire life. Now, she was the victim. The unexpected shield. Eleanor's eyes welled with tears. She looked ready to collapse. Mrs. Sterling wasn't done. "Actually, take the tray away. Your commoner hands might ruin the flavor. Isn't that what you used to say, Eleanor?" "That's enough, Mrs. Sterling," I said, my voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. The crowd went silent. Mrs. Sterling turned to me, her fake smile plastered on. "Oh, Kajal, I was just having a bit of fun. You of all people should enjoy this, after how she treated you." "I don't find cruelty fun," I replied coldly. And while Eleanor may have lacked character in the past, she is currently working for a living. That is more than I can say for those who spend their lives living off their husband's dividends. A lesson in real class. I turned to Eleanor. She was trembling, waiting for me to deliver the final blow. Instead, I took a glass of water from her tray and gave her a small professional nod. Mrs. Miller, the service tonight has been excellent. Thank you. I then turned to the maitre d'. Please ensure the catering staff gets a double bonus tonight. They are the backbone of this event. Eleanor looked at me in shock. I hadn't humiliated her. I hadn't kicked her while she was down. I had given her something she had never given me. Dignity. The private conversation. Later that night, I found Richard and Eleanor in the back hallway, exhausted. Richard looked at me, his pride finally broken. Why did you do that? He asked. You could have destroyed us in front of everyone. You had the right. Because being a Vance isn't about how much money you have, Richard, I said. It's about how you treat people who can do absolutely nothing for you. You thought wealth was a weapon. I use it as a tool. I handed them an envelope. Mark and I have set up a small trust. It won't buy you a mansion, but it will pay for a modest house and a comfortable retirement. On one condition. You never look down on another human being again. The new legacy. As the gala ended, Mark and I stood on the balcony overlooking the city. You're amazing, Mark whispered, putting his arm around me. You gave them a second chance they didn't deserve. I didn't do it for them, Mark, I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. I did it for us. I don't want our children to grow up in a world of hate and pedigrees. I want them to know that the only thing that truly reveals your identity is your kindness. We watched the sunrise over Manhattan. The Miller name was gone, but a new legacy, the Vance Miller legacy, was just beginning. A legacy built on love, hard work, and the knowledge that no matter who you are, everyone deserves a seat at the table.